Back in late 2023, I got a job working overnight security at a shopping mall that was scheduled to be demolished within the next year. The place wasn't completely abandoned, but it was getting close. More than half the stores had already shut down, entire sections of the building were empty, and most customers preferred driving to a newer mall about 20 minutes away. For me, it was the perfect job. The pay was decent, the work was easy, and most nights were spent walking through empty hallways, making sure nobody had broken in after closing time. The mall closed at 10 p.m. every night. By midnight, the building felt completely different. The music stopped, the food court went dark, the fountains shut off. All that remained was the hum of old air conditioning units and the sound of my own footsteps echoing through the corridors. For the first few weeks, absolutely nothing unusual happened. Then one night, something changed.
It started with an escalator. That probably sounds ridiculous, but I need you to understand that when your job consists of walking the exact same route every night, you begin noticing details most people would ignore. You remember which lights flicker, which store gates make noise when they're locked, which security cameras occasionally lose signal. You also remember how many escalators are inside the building. There were always two. One going up, one going down. That was it. But sometime around 2 a.m. on a Thursday night, I rounded the corner into the central atrium and stopped dead in my tracks. There were three.
I stood there staring at them for several seconds. One went up, one went down, and another stood between them. At first, I assumed I was tired. I had only slept 4 hours that day and had already consumed enough coffee to make my hands shake. So I rubbed my eyes and looked again. The third escalator was still there. The strange part wasn't that it existed. The strange part was that it looked completely normal. It matched the others perfectly. Same design, same color, same age. It looked like it had always been there, as if it had been part of the mall for years. I immediately pulled out my phone and opened older photos I'd taken inside the building during previous shifts. Only 2 escalators. I checked another photo. 2 escalators. Another. 2. No matter how many pictures I looked through, the third escalator wasn't there. But when I looked up from my phone, it was standing directly in front of me. I considered calling my supervisor. Then I imagined trying to explain that an escalator had suddenly appeared in the middle of a shopping mall. Instead, I decided to investigate it myself.
The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't moving. The other 2 escalators were operating normally. This one remained completely still. I walked closer. The metal steps looked brand new compared to the others. There wasn't a single scratch on them. No dust, no dirt, no signs anyone had ever used it before. A cold feeling settled in my stomach, because the mall was decades old. Nothing inside that building looked brand new. Nothing. I aimed my flashlight toward the top. The escalator disappeared into darkness. That didn't make sense either. The ceiling above the atrium wasn't very high. I should have been able to see where it ended. Instead, the top vanished into a shadow that seemed far deeper than it should have been. I stood there for nearly a minute, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Then my radio crackled. The sudden sound nearly made me jump. Security check. It was another guard working the parking lot. I responded immediately. Copy. The distraction lasted maybe 10 seconds. When I looked back at the escalator, it was gone. Not hidden, not moved. Gone. Only the original 2 remained. I walked directly to where it had been standing. Nothing. Just polished tile flooring. No marks, no seams, no evidence anything had ever been there. For the rest of the night,
I couldn't stop thinking about it. I checked every camera covering the atrium. Nothing appeared unusual. The footage showed only 2 escalators, exactly as it should. Eventually, I convinced myself that exhaustion had gotten the better of me. That explanation lasted less than 24 hours. The following night, I found a photograph sitting on my desk inside the security office. I had never seen it before. The picture showed the mall's central atrium. 3 escalators. Not 2. 3. My hands started shaking before I even turned the photo over. Written on the back, in black marker, were 6 words. You noticed it too early. I immediately searched the office. Nobody was there. Every door remained locked. The security camera showed nobody entering the room. Yet somehow, the photograph had appeared anyway. I remember sitting there, staring at those 6 words, while every hair on my arm stood up. Because something about the message bothered me more than the photograph itself. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. It sounded disappointed. Like someone had expected me to take longer. And somehow, that was much worse. I folded the photo and shoved it into my pocket. Then, I made a decision that I still regret. Instead of reporting it, I decided to find out who left it. At 1:47 a.m., I headed back toward the atrium. And that's when I saw the 3rd escalator again. Only this time, someone was standing at the top, watching me. I don't know why I didn't turn around and leave. Looking back, every instinct in my body was telling me to get out of that building immediately. But curiosity has a way of overriding common sense, especially when you're convinced there's a logical explanation waiting to be found. The figure standing at the top of the escalator wasn't moving. It wasn't waving. It wasn't trying to get my attention. It was simply standing there, watching. The distance and darkness made it impossible to see any details. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I could make out was a human-shaped silhouette standing perfectly still where the escalator disappeared into shadow. I raised my flashlight. The beam reached halfway up before fading into darkness. The figure remained visible. That shouldn't have been possible. If my flashlight couldn't reach that far, I shouldn't have been able to see the person either. Yet somehow I could. I took a few cautious steps forward. The figure didn't react. Another step. Nothing. Then another. The moment my foot touched the first step of the escalator, every light in the atrium flickered. Once, twice, 3 times, and suddenly the figure was gone. I froze. My flashlight swept across the darkness at the top. Nothing. No movement. No sound. No sign anyone had ever been there. For several seconds, I considered climbing the escalator. Then my radio crackled again. This time, it wasn't another guard. It was static. A loud burst of distorted noise exploded from the speaker hanging on my shoulder. I grabbed the radio immediately. Hello? Nothing. More static. Then I heard something buried underneath it. A voice. Very faint, almost impossible to hear. At first, I thought someone was trying to contact me through a bad signal. Then I realized the voice wasn't speaking through the radio. It was counting. 7. Static. 8. Static. 9. The voice sounded distant, like it was coming from the other end of a long hallway. My stomach tightened because I recognized the voice. It was mine. The radio suddenly went silent. I stood there, staring at it. My hands had started shaking again. I switched channels. Nothing. The signal returned to normal as if nothing had happened. I didn't finish my patrol that night. I spent the rest of the shift sitting inside the security office watching camera feeds. Nothing unusual appeared. No extra escalator, no mysterious figure, no unexplained movement.